of Lazio Lounge. Well, a special episode of Lazio Lounge because we are here talking about the transfer market winter transfer market of Lazio. As we mentioned in the past podcasts, we were quite confident this winter that finally Lazio would have changed something and maybe sign a couple of quality players, of good players that could help Maurizio Sarri. Um, the result, Alison McKenzie, is pretty much the same of the past, right? Lazio doing pretty much nothing. We signed two players, but come on, Kamenovic was here since summer, and Cabral was a real late signing of the last minute. So I'm very disappointed. I guess a lot of Lazio fans all over the world are. Um, what can we add more?
Well, first thing I was going to do was point out, because you wrote on our Twitter account yesterday that we're going to be doing it a day later than usual this time because we want a special episode about the transfer window, which you wrote, I think, probably first thing in the morning on deadline day. But I just want to read out some of the responses which are quite good. So special is in 30-second one, or 2 hours of uncontrollable swearing and the sound of breaking things around the studio. Someone else just said a pod that will be both short and depressing. So yeah, we can probably provide all those things, can't we? Like short and depressing sounds about right. I mean, well, there was one thing, Cabral, you did mention, is one thing, and one thing is more than we probably expected. So yeah, but I think in general this market has been pretty depressing, especially given that we stopped to talk about it, in depth about 2 weeks ago, and nothing changed in that entire time, basically.
No. Can we say that Iglitare has to leave? He's has proven to not be able to help this team. The last 3-4 summer transfer market has been dreadful, and well, let's not mention the winter one because, I mean, we have players like Musacchio and other stars that Tare signed in winter, and I think it's time for Lotito to let him go, to give a sign to the fans, because this is simply not enough. It's not good enough.
No, it's not. And well, I think the first point I want to make is that you will find people out there actually defending, and to a certain extent, or at least trying to explain how this has happened by pointing to the liquidity index and pointing to the financial constrictions that Lazio have ended up being in the situation they've been in. But I just have to say that's their own mess. They put themselves in that position. That is not an excuse for not being able to get business done on deadline day, because they should never really be in that position in the first place. And if you consider the fact that Lazio needed to offload all these players in order to be in a position to sign anyone, well, that comes as a result of all these players being left on the club's books for long without actually being in the squad, without playing any game time, with spending all this money on players like Murici and Vavro, who then you have to embarrassingly get rid of. These are all transfer mistakes that have happened in the past that led to this situation. You can't use that as a defense now for Lazio's inaction in this market, because it's past mistakes that have put them into that position in the first place. Just need to get that off my chest first.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, as Hardos mentioned, finally Donny, Lukaku, Vavro, Durmisi, Murici are out. Well, Lukaku, no, but apart from Lukaku, all the others terrible signing from Iglitare. Lukaku had a couple of good things, I would say, but as you were mentioning, all mistakes from Iglitare that cost us. Lazio had this indice di liquidità issue, and it's all related to this. But the other point, Alistair, is we saw other sport director preparing the winter transfer market. The index of liquidity is not a surprise that pop up the 1st of January. From the 30th of September, you knew Lazio had this issue. So you had from the 1st of October till the 31st of December to prepare, to do something. Um, Inter signed their goalkeeper in December, right? The Ajax goalkeeper they found. Roma signed two players in the first 2 weeks of January. Probably they have been doing the homework during the span from September to December. What the hell was Iglitare doing from September to December? Because again, the impression is like he woke up from hibernation on the 1st of January and said, "Oh, it's winter transfer market. Where what happened before?" And had to catch up, which is pretty much impossible.
Yeah, exactly. And it always feels like that, though, doesn't it? I mean, it's the same in the summer, where we talk every summer, I think, about the fact that we want ideally the summer signings to be in time for Alonso, so that whoever the coach happens to be that summer has a bit of time to work with them, because you can't really put a price on how valuable it is when you've got new players trying to fit into the system, that they have those 2 weeks to get used to training with their teammates, getting to know their teammates and their role in the team. And how often have we had in the summer players actually arriving in time? You're right. The hibernation thing is perfect, because it does feel like this every single time, that Lazio just have nothing prepared, and then they'll occasionally throw things out there. I remember, Lucas Leiva, for example, was a big surprise signing that nobody really saw coming, and they will occasionally throw those things out there and take you by surprise. And don't get me wrong, Tari's had plenty of hits in his time where he's had some great deals for Acerbi, for Lazzari, for Alberto, Lucas Leiva, Milinkovic Savic, but the ratio of hits to misses is a big problem now, and it's restricting the progress of the club. Because I think something that people are talking about a lot now is, what does this mean for Sarri? We've said he's going to need at least 2 or 3 markets to get a team together that's capable of playing his style of football. And that was essentially the main issue with January this year. Was I don't think it's ever been clearer what Lazio needed to do in a transfer window, in any transfer window. This defense needs to be sorted out. Like, that is so glaringly obvious after watching the first half of the season. And a month later, we have nothing but another winger. It's incredible.
And you were mentioning the defense. We needed a central defender, and you get Kamenovic, that is a left back. We sent on loan Murici, that is the Vice Immobile, and you sign a player that is probably a left winger. So, I mean, what was your mind when you signed these players? What was your target? Because you know what we needed, and you signed two players that could be useful, but are not what Lazio needed. Central defender, that's the top priority, and you didn't do it. And again, as
And
you
they
woke
sold
up,
Vavro as well.
yeah. And the funny thing, Alistair, about this is that Lazio sold 3 players on the list of players available for the Serie A, because Murici was in the list, Vavro was in the list, and Johnny was added because Escalante came out. And to this list, we had only Cabral and Kamenovic. So this means that from today, Sari will have 1 player less available. So, if possible, we made the team weaker. I mean, this is simply unbelievable.
And made the defense weaker. This is the thing, is that I look, I'm on board with the idea of selling Vavro if that's what you need to do to then strengthen this defense. Yep. Because for whatever reason, Vavro hasn't cut it at Lazio. Fine. But Vavro has actually been at least coming off the bench in the last couple of games. We've seen, we've spotted Dennis Vavro again in recent times. And when you compare it, it's like, well, what does this team need? This team needs centre backs, because at the moment there's only 3. One of them is Patrick, and one of them is injured Acerbi, and the other one is, yellow card machine Luis Felipe. So, okay, Stefan Radu you can throw into that as well, but obviously getting a bit older and not been playing centre back for a long time. But Dennis Vavro, you're talking about a Slovakia international who has played in, top flight European competition, who's obviously done very well in the Danish league. a guy who Lazio thought was a 12 million euro player just 2 years ago. So is it better to have him or to have a left back Kamenovic, who's only ever played in the Serbian league, who was the club clearly thought wasn't good enough to bother even registering him 6 months ago, who hasn't played any football in that time? I mean, you see a lot of reports today in the Italian press about Sarri being furious about this. And surely he will be. But what does this mean, Vittorio? I mean, how bad does this get? If Sarri is looking at this situation, he must be like, I texted you yesterday saying he must just wonder what he's doing here after a market like this.
But the good news, Alistair, is the contract renewal, right? Strakosha, Luis Felipe, Marusic, Leiva. Why are you laughing? We didn't renew the contract. I thought Tari was busy renewing contract, and that's the reason why he didn't do the transfer market window.
What does he spend his time doing?
I have no idea. Maybe watching his son playing football.
Yeah, I mean, you make a good point. You know, it's a separate point, but it's also a good one. There's valuable
today,
young first-team players. 3 of our starting 11, Cataldi, Felipe, Strakosha, are out of contract in 6 months. And as you're about to say, from today, they're free to join anyone else if they want to.
Yep. Yeah, it's terrible. It's terrible. And again, you cannot say, well, he was busy doing transfer market because, I mean, we didn't do pretty much nothing. And I don't know if it was more hilarious or sad to see, you know, it's like at school when you forgot to do your homeworks and the lesson will start in 5 minutes and you're trying to get the homeworks done from the others and collecting them. I mean, how many names did Lazio try to contact in the last day? I mean, even Destro came out. Destro. I mean, on Friday night, I think like other 6 players were in the Lazio radar. They came out from nowhere. I mean, it was like desperation mode for Lazio. And this tells you how Tari was unorganized, unprepared for this transfer market window. That I want to repeat, it's not a surprise. Not someone woke up in December and said, hey, let's do one transfer market from the 1st of January. No, it's always there. And all the time, Lazio failed to do something good.
Yeah, and you should say at this point, we do have a special podcast coming up, talking with someone who knows all about Cabral, who can actually give us some expert insight into what kind of a player he is and so on. But it does make me, what you've just said, it does make me slightly nervous, because if this was a plan all along, surely this wouldn't be something that was being announced in the last 5 minutes of the market. And if it's being announced in the last 5 minutes of the market, it stinks of a lack of preparation and, like you say, a desperation to just get someone in. And if the kind of planning part has been overlooked, it does make you wonder what kind of a player we're getting. I mean, look, I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. On paper, it looks good because he's young. He's played at a very good level. He's got European Champions League experience, Europa League experience. He plays in a role where he's capable of playing across the front 3 by the looks of it. So, you know, he does tick a lot of boxes, but I just don't. I'm just not. I'd be amazed, basically, if we've got our hands on a real gem here, considering the fact that Sporting were willing to let him go so easily right at the end.
Yep. Yeah, and we have to point something, Alistair. The original plan for Lazio was to sign Casale, that is a central defender from Verona, and Miranchuk from Atalanta. The rumors were that Lazio was talking with them and waiting to sell Murici before making the offer. But the fact is that the day before the end of the transfer market window, Verona said, no, I'm not giving you on loan this player now in January. We can talk about it in June, but not now. And Atalanta never really opened for Miranchuk. It was more suggestion that Lazio had that Atalanta would be willing to give out this player. And again, Casale would have made perfectly sense. Central defender, young, coming from Verona. Miranchuk is someone that didn't have a great career at Atalanta, could play in different position, but it's not a number 9, probably not the perfect player we were looking for. But again, these were late plan. Lazio start thinking about this around the 29th of January. And by the end of 30th January, it was over already. So this organization and no B plan that you should always have in place in this situation.
Yeah, I wasn't really convinced by the Miranchuk idea, to be honest. So I'm not gutted that one's not happened. But yeah, I mean, it's we've been talking about the same names since we did that podcast 2 weeks ago, and even before then, those names were still around. It's even if it is this approach, like you mentioned, the hibernation approach, where Tari wakes up on the 1st of January and starts, you've still got enough time to make something happen. And all the other teams in the league, apart from, I think, Spezia, have been
Napoli probably
in the market. Yeah, okay. Napoli and Milan have been pretty quiet as well, to be honest. But they have kind of much stronger, deeper squads to begin with than Lazio do. If you look at the teams around us, Roma, Sergio Oliveira and Ainsley Maitland-Niles, 2 players who they brought in to strengthen positions of weakness. Fiorentina obviously sold Vlahovic, but they've gone and replaced him with 3 players, with Cabral, with Piontek, with Ikone. Who else? I mean, Juve have just
they didn't do nothing.
It reminded everyone that they're Juve this January. And so it's basically now leaves Lazio in a position. Even Atalanta managed. Okay, they lost Gosens, but he's barely played for them this season anyway because he's been injured. So they haven't really needed him. And on top of that, they go and sign Boga from Sassuolo, who's an awesome player. I would have loved at Lazio, and Mihailo from Parma as well. I mean, it's just crazy that you look around and, like you say, Lazio have one less player essentially is the outcome from this January, and the teams around Lazio seem to be stronger.
Yeah, the spread
is concerning.
The spread between Lazio and the rivals have increased, and this, Alistair, happened every winter transfer market. Every winter transfer market, Lazio sign one or none players, and Tare goes out and say, yeah, well, this team is so good, it was difficult to improve it. And the other team does it, and the gap increases. And this is no exception. Juventus did an unbelievable transfer market, and they were a rival for the 4th spot, right? They were there, close to us. So I think not only Lazio is a worse team than before, but the other teams have improved. So I don't know. I don't know if we're going to add some youngsters from the Primavera in the first team. But again, would Sarri trust them? Would Sarri play them? Because the other thing we didn't mention is the signing of Cabral. For me, it's a message that Sarri sent saying, hey, I don't think Raul Moro and Luca Romero are ready now to play. So maybe I need another winger if we cannot sign anyone else.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to think that he's been brought in as a number 9 predominantly, or that Sarri sees something, or I would like to think, Vittorio, that they've asked Sarri, for a start. I'd like to think he knew something about this in advance, but I'm not even convinced about that. I mean, one of the comments we got here from Philip Pezzano, he said, surely Sarri leaves sooner than expected with this stubbornness occurring. Tari has failed more than succeeded. Lotito speaks trash, and it's all been hidden because of Inzaghi's successful time and Tari with a couple of hits on the market during that period. And, this is something I remember talking about in years gone by, the concern that Inzaghi was going to be fed up with it at some point and walk out. And I think we probably undervalued how much it meant to have a coach who had that relationship, that emotional attachment to the club, where he was probably more willing to put up with this kind of stuff than others might be. But are you now concerned about Sarri long term, that this kind of stuff will drive him away from the club earlier?
Yeah, before we talk about that, there's funny rumors here in Italy that Tare sent to Sarri 2 matches of Sporting to check Cabral, and in none of them he played. So he pretty much. So I don't know if it's true, but I mean this is so funny that I can see it happening. And Sarri called him, "Hey, he didn't play here. What the hell did you send me?" But the other thing, Alistair, is that, yeah, there are a lot of rumors saying that Sarri could leave the club now. I don't think it's going to happen, but this summer definitely something has to change, or Sarri could be leaving, and it made ton of sense. I mean, he take the blame because at the end of the year, it's the manager who takes the blame. But I mean, if you don't sign him with the players, then can you really blame the manager for that? So, and as you said, he hasn't got any attachment to the club. So yeah, he could leave.
And yeah, the more that Lazio talk about giving a coach a new contract, the more you're worried about that coach leaving, I would say, is another thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it was worryingly early that Lazio started talking about extending Sarri's contract. I think the one thing I would say that works or could work to Lazio's advantage here is that I don't think Sarri's going to want to walk out of a third club in a row after 1 year. Chelsea, then Juventus, clearly very different jobs, and it wasn't him walking out so much as being kicked out. But I think it's going to reflect badly on him if he then steps down a notch in terms of ambition to Lazio, and he's still leaving after 1 year. And let's be honest, probably a year where he's not kind of lighting things up. I don't think we're expecting. I mean, hopefully we get huge success this year, but I don't think we're expecting it. So
no, not anymore.
That could work, but they're gonna have to pull out the stops this summer. They might have to do some work between now and the summer to prepare or something crazy.
I think, I don't know if you agree, the first step is to fire Iglitare. I think he's proven to not be good enough. So I think the first step of the revolution is to kick out Tare. In the past, I would be a little bit scared because I thought, well, can we find a better replacement? But now, after this winter transfer, I would say even the first man out of the street could have done worse than Iglitare. So, whoever gets the job would be better than Iglitare. Or at least this is my opinion. Cannot be worse than that.
Who would you...
Well, for example...
Do you have any ideas who you'd like as a replacement?
Well, Sabatini came in, what was it, 2 weeks ago at Salernitana? And he signed 10 players. How can it be possible in 2 weeks and Tare in 6 months didn't get anybody? He has a 6-month contract, so he could be leaving in June, Salernitana. He knows Lotito. That could be a deal. Sartori of Atalanta, he's leaving in June. That would be an amazing deal. But everybody, I would say, I think Tare has been so bad that, hey, this is a friend of mine. He's a football fan. He loves football. Yeah, come on, let's try it. I mean, cannot be worse than Tare.
Yeah, I think there's a few good options. I still find it really hard to believe that it's actually going to happen just because of the same old thing of how close he is to Lotito. But it's quite funny that the Salernitana thing is quite funny just because it's like Salernitana basically unchained after, Lotito is no longer in charge, which means they have this crazy January immediately. As soon as Lotito's out the door, they have a January where they just sign an entirely new team, basically, because that would never have otherwise happened. But yeah, I mean, it's incredible to see, a club in that situation, in that part of the table, making as many moves as they did. And some of the players they got in, I was thinking, I'd probably take them. I'd take Dragusin, for example. Why
Yeah,
not? But Salernitana are getting these players.
yeah, they were even linked to Zarate, Diego Costa. I
Yes,
mean, I mean, what a signing for.
I I joked to you yesterday that after the Destro thing, I said, "Oh, it's going to be Goran Pandev, isn't it?" And I
He
was
was close,
joking.
right?
And then about 1 hour later, Goran Pandev joined Parma. And it's like, oh, Pandev was actually on the market. We could have got Pandev.
I don't think the relationship with the Lotito would be good enough. But yeah, and the other thing, Alex, that we have to point out is that we said Lazio had to sell players, but Johnny went on loan, Lukaku loan, Durmisi loan. The only two are Vavro and Murici, who has gone on own loan, and the club has an option to buy them, not an obligation. So this means that probably, I hope not, but probably in 6 months' time they will be back at Formello. So yes, we solved the problem for this 6 months, but it's not a long-term solution. So again, this summer we will have the same problem again. Find a solution for these players. Well, not Lukaku because his contract is expiring, but all the others, yes.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. And it's the same problem there always is. There's always a backlog of players in the reserves or not in the squad or on the fringes who are just not doing anything. It's crazy, really. I mean, they did manage to find a club for Marici eventually, which we weren't sure they would actually manage to pull off, given how many different countries and teams seem to be showing interest. But yeah, did you see Marici's farewell message to the true Laziali?
I thought that was top class, honestly. I thought he really
Yeah,
did a nice thing. And the other thing is, did you see the video Mallorca made for Murici
no, I haven't actually.
for the presentation? I mean, it's like they sign a top player, so they believe he's a good thing. And I don't know, did anybody see the video of Johnny? I mean, it looks
Yeah,
like Sporting Gion signed Messi. For a moment,
yeah,
I said, is that our Johnny or is someone else? I mean, and I come back to the same thing. I don't think this player are so bad. As you mentioned, Vavro, national player, very good at Copenhagen. I thought Vavro didn't have a chance. I thought Murici, in a different scheme, could have been a good striker. Johnny, we knew he wasn't fit for the 3-5-2, right? We knew it. So
yeah.
I think that one of the biggest issue of Tare is signing maybe good players that didn't fit with the scheme. Vavro never played with a three-man defense. Johnny never played with a five-man midfield. Um, Murici need the ball high on the box and not a counter-attack team. But
I
it's not
think
a surprise. Inzaghi played 3-5-2 for 5 years. Why should have he changed for you? So this
yeah,
again shows
yeah.
you the problem, right?
But I think Tari has this weird kind of unhealthy obsession with wingers, though, doesn't he? I mean, it was crazy when Inzaghi played this formation for so many years that didn't use wingers. How many wingers he kept signing? But as well as Johnny, we had Pedro Neto, who
Adekanye.
Adekanye, Pedro Neto, Nani, even for a while, and
Yeah.
the Felipe Anderson. I know he wasn't signed, I guess, but it was before his time. But there were quite a lot of wingers being signed, and we kept saying, where are they going to go? They're basically going to have to completely change position, change role, whether either to a kind of second striker or to a wing back. And then as continued with, at least it makes sense with Sari, but it's kind of like an overload now because since Sari's come in, he's now signed 4 wingers. It's Anderson, Zaccagni, Pedro, and now Cabral. And it's good to have
With
options,
Romero.
but it's crazy how and Romero 5. And we obviously needed wingers to make this system work, but it's just such an imbalance where there's so many other parts of the team that we need like immediate fixes there. But Tari he just loves wingers, and it's like all he wants to do is sign wingers.
I don't know. Maybe he wanted to be a winger and didn't work out, and now he's trying to find the the the, the right winger for him. I don't know, really, but yeah. Honestly, I repeat, the next step is to fire Tare. Otherwise, Lotito responsible as well because there were rumors that Lotito was really upset with Tare. And now that the transfer market is closed and Lazio failed to deliver, I think someone has to pay the price. Someone has to take responsibility of this failure, of this big failure, and it's not the first time. So I hope this is going to be the next step. And then I think it's going to be funny the next press conference of Maurizio Sarri, if he's going to
Yeah.
be talking about the failure of the transfer market, or he's going to say, well, I didn't care, or well, I know we had problems, or he's going to attack Iglitari. That's going to be interesting, I think.
Well, the good thing about Sarri is he will say what he thinks.
Yep.
So I think we'll get an honest assessment from him. I think he will be unhappy. I think he will say something because he's said very openly that this team needs reinforcements, that he needs, at least 2 or 3 players in January. And, we know Kamenevic doesn't count, which means he's just been given one out of the blue who we don't really know an awful lot about.
Do you believe, Alistair, that Sarri said, I want Cabral? Because yesterday there was this interview with the agent of Man, the Parma player, who said that he was nearly ready to sign with Lazio, but Tari said, no, we have to stop because Sarri wanted Cabral.
I find this a bit confusing because it's kind of like either the club have ignored Sarri for the whole month, and then the last day they're like, "Oh, fine, we'll go for the player you want then, because none of our brilliant ideas are coming off." Or Sarri's just come up with this idea and told them on the last day. I don't know. Do you think they turned around to Sarri on Monday morning and said, "Hey, mate, can you give us a list of we just realized it's deadline day. Can you give us a list before 8:00 of some players you want?"
We had a list, but they're all unavailable. So if you have a choice, it's your turn, right? Yeah, I found it very bizarre, even because, again, as I mentioned, in the last 10 matches of the Portuguese league, I think he played 15 minutes. So it was hard to spot the players. So I don't know. I'm not convinced about that. But again, I'm not convinced in general of Lazio transfer market. So it's not a surprise, right? Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the next press conference of Sarri. I can see Lazio avoiding and not doing it just to avoid issue, but it would be fun to hear him talk and see what he thinks about this transfer market window.
Well, that should be on Friday, I guess, because Fiorentina's Saturday night. So yeah, I mean, it's a big game to come back into after this weird international break because clearly Fiorentina Lazio level in points, actually, looking at it. And I think that there's already a lot of unhappiness after this market, and it'll be interesting at the next home game to see what the crowd are saying, what they're doing, what they're reacting to, what the songs are, who they're abusing, because I think there's a lot of anger out there about this, and I think it becomes even more important now to get a result against Fiorentina, because this is a very important game for the kind of top 6 race, but even more so, it's an important game to try and lift the mood a bit after this.
We forgot to mention probably the weirdest thing about this Lazio transfer market window. Sarri saying no to sell Patrick.
Well, just as well. There'd be no one left.
Yeah, I mean, the situation is so bad that we couldn't afford to sell Patrick. I mean, I think this tells you everything, right?
Well, not just that, but Patrick is very high up in the hierarchy of Lazio defenders.
Yeah.
I think Acerbi is on course to be back for Fiorentina, as far as I'm aware. The last thing I read, no,
I don't know, don't think so, but
so that would be a boost, obviously. But yeah, we'll see. I think we do need a good performance. It would be nice to get a result to go with this, but let's not forget Fiorentina are under similar pressure, and the atmosphere at Antonio Franchi is probably going to be very, very hostile as well after selling Vlahovic and all the nasty stuff that followed that from the fans with their banners and the rest of it. So
I think that could be an advantage for us. I think they're missing some defenders as well, so definitely some advantage for Lazio. But we will see what happens there and what happens when Lazio played at home. They should be back to 50% of capacity of the stadium, so that would be good. And I think we can wrap it up here, Alistair. Our special transfer market, you see, guys, it wasn't 30 seconds. And I made Alistair laugh, so it wasn't so depressing. So you see, big surprise for everything.
I feel quite depressed now.
Do I have to repeat the joke? Well, it's not a joke, unfortunately. It's a rumor. So again, everybody, thanks for listening to Lazio Lounge. Subscribe, rate, and review our podcasts. And we'll be back after Fiorentina Lazio. Goodbye, Alistair.
Ciao, ciao.